everybody. How's it going, Pappy? Good to see you here. Hope you guys can hear me all right this morning. I'll be good to go in about 5 minutes here for some commentary. Like we're about even on the day. Hey, Krabby. Free Poker, how you doing? Oh, first all in of the day. Missed it completely. Let's grab the replay. Still trying to figure out the audio issues, but run through this real fast. What happened here? Chance, grab another buy-in. Bet pots. Terrible flop for Chance. Phil bets half pot. Phil pots the turn and gets jammed on in a very unexpected spot. Wow. Chance towards the bottom of his range as far as hand strength. Somehow finds top two pair on the deuce 3-6-8 board. Not something you're going to get a lot. And we have a bit of a cooler with also with eights up. Should be good here the vast majority of the time. Free betting range isn't. Chance picks up a buy-in. Pretty interesting pot developing here. We had the half pot c-bet by Phil on table 2 on the Broadway low texture. Then with the second Broadway card coming in on the turn that does favor Chance's range, we get the full pot side lead. Chance representing essentially Queen 10 plus here. We've had very similar situations yesterday. Chance has a lot more of the Queen 10 and now Broadway wrap plus high flush draw type combos that are comfortable getting in here. Phil usually stuck with smaller wraps, smaller flush draws, or worse queens. Does have bottom set and gets rivered by the Broadway wrap flush draw combo that I was talking about. We do have an excellent read on the situation. However, Phil getting punished by the river, Chance having that exact Broadway wrap plus high flush draw that I mentioned does get there on the river. This is one of the frustrating things about PLO. You can have a very clear nutted type hand like a set here on the turn and still only be running about 58%. Just so many outs for Chance, and he does find one of them on the river. Uh, Chance off to an excellent start today, up about $50,000 in the first 30 minutes. Free bet pot here. Chance checking the triple wheel board. Bill going for the bet in position on a texture that substantially favors his range. Seen this frequently. Expect Phil to continue barreling with a large portion of his range here, either having it or continuing to tell the story. Um, pretty almost any turn interaction is going to continue to barrel here. It will put Chance in a very tough spot. And with few hands that can continue on river shoves, Chance would need some sort of five with a spade draw and a pair. Certainly has some ace five combos that he's going to be happy to call here. Depending on how you're running it, it's obviously going to depend a lot on the parameters you set, the aggression factors that you have, and things like that. A lot of it depends on if you give out of in position on the turn, or excuse me, out of position on the turn, check raises or not. So, for example, if Phil is playing pure check calls on that turn, which I think there's a very good chance that he is, it becomes much worse to bet the river with anything other than nut flush. Obviously, if Phil has check raises in that spot with the nuts at some frequency, it a lot better. And Phil with the set of fours on the flop, getting it done over the river trips. I believe, is that what we had? We had king king with the river trips, so we see a spot here where Chance essentially flopped dead, was forced to continue on the flop, picked up equity on the turn somehow, and then hit what is the worst river in the deck for him in the form of another three, and felt it was good enough to call off. Did not believe Phil's story of going bet, bet, bet. Thought the trips might be good here. Phil with the straight blocker, which I'm sure he didn't love to have here, and the top and middle set gets paid off. In an interesting dynamic between the two on rivers, where we've had some very cautious checkbacks with backdoor flushes, and we've had some very aggressive river bets with low straights on flush boards. Um, Certainly trying to get a read for each other's style so far. Limitless, thank you for the follow. Joel, thank you for the follow. Persian Cucumber, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it, guys. Welcome, day 2 of the streaming career. Big pot here on table 1. Board pairing, and probably even more importantly, non-draw completing river. All semi-bluffs now have missed, and there were quite a lot of them on the turn. No, this is live. We're not broadcasting replays, although we did do yesterday's session. Chance once again going with his 3/4 pot river bet on the paired board. Very interesting to see. I'm not sure where he thinks he's differential is coming here from this to pot. We aren't sure if this is something to do with balance and the frequency that he wants to bet at, something to do with exploitative and thinking Phil's overcalling this sizing. We just aren't sure yet, but it is the strategy that he's implemented so far, a place that most people aren't. Love to see the raise here by Phil. This would be an incredible bluff. Obviously, simply representing Queen 8 point or better, for that matter. Really aren't going to be doing this raise with your lower boats, even for that small amount behind. And Chance with the fold. This is one of the first times that we've seen a pot of this size get there with him using his 3/4 river bet and going bet fold. Interesting to keep an eye on if Phil starts to attack that sizing a little bit more, if this was just a circumstance of hands. a large pot on table 2 after the flop bet, continuation bet by Chance, and raise by Phil attacking the paired board. We do have a lot of very comfortable natural bluffs here. Makes this spot even harder to defend for the out of position player. They're going to have a deficit of eights, but we'll know that the in position player can continue firing on a number of bluff cards. That does complete one of them. The 9-7 gets there, nothing else. This is going to be a pretty polar river bet here by Mr. Galfond. Would go for the whole enchilada here. Could see our first real large pot of the day if we get the river jam. Challenging Mr. Kornuth to defend. Really, really putting his overpairs in an almost impossible spot. However, we have seen Chance make some light river calls so far. Had some very good reads on day 1 on the river. Phil gives up. Chance did have the rivered full house, and the flopped 8 was setting the trap the whole way. Uh-oh. The shit talking has started early. We see table 1. Chance putting out the I know you didn't have it there. Phil responding with I always have it. Very interesting. Hard story to believe from Phil. We know he's an aggressive player. This isn't Phil Hellmuth we're talking about. He probably doesn't always have it. That response makes me think he was bluffing on the last river. Chance seeming a little bit tilted. Couldn't find the raise there. Be a storyline to follow as the challenge progresses. Yeah, that's why we have the mature content warning on. Take it to Thessia. It is a little awkward for us as viewers to see, guys that we hold in such high esteem shit talking like this, but it's just part of the game here. We see Phil going with the check raise on the ace turn. Very interesting. Obviously at a range disadvantage here, but saying he just has it. This is a low frequency line, very polar, takes it down. And man, it's right here. It's in the chat box. You can see it there for everybody to read. We keep it on screen. We don't shy away from this stuff, no matter how vulgar it gets, no matter how aggressive the players become. We do allow you the chance to read chat. We will never censor that. A big spot here on the river. Another board pairing, draw missing river coming in. Will Chance go for his signature 2/3? 3/4 bet here. Phil with the 3 bet. No, Chance goes for full pot. We don't have a snap call from Mr. Galfond. Will we see hero call? Pretty interesting. A lot has obviously missed on this board. Straight, low straight is not very well represented. And we have a 3 bet pot on table 2. Great flop for Mr. Galfond to get betting on. And he takes it down with the simple C bet. Back to table 1. Phil in the tank. Facing this full pot bet on the board. Pairing river. Does fold. Will we see some shit talking in return? No, Phil content to let that one go quietly into the night. We have another 3rd pot blocker bet here on table 2 by Chance out of position. Wow, we have a very interesting result given how this hand played out. This was the check raise on the flop with the gutter ball by Chance. So confirmed, Chance is very aggressively attacking flops. We haven't gotten to see many showdowns after his flop aggression, which was a theme yesterday. Goes with the blocker bet on the river. A larger bet very likely would have worked given Phil's exact holding goes with the absolute air blocker bet. No board interaction whatsoever. The best thing about his hand is that he doesn't have a diamond. However, the turn checked. So that's pretty irrelevant. Phil snaps him off with the 2 and just a pair of jacks. Um, Fairly irrelevant too. So really just naked jacks here. Pretty quality call. Something that you do have to defend given the sizing that Chance used on the river. Really good to see some of the hands that Chance is attacking flops with. Just didn't get enough of these at Showdown yesterday. I'm sure Phil will be very happy to get the information from this hand. Pretty good turn for Chance. 3-betters range here. And Chance does take that range advantage and fires full pot. Representing the straight here early, trying to go for 2 streets of max value, setting up the river jam. Phil defends, nothing comes in. This looks like a spot that's going to get jammed by Chance very frequently, given the action so far in this hand. We do have a decent amount of natural bluffs here with our Broadway combos with jacks, anything like ace jack with clubs. More obviously are all of our jack jack combo. Excuse me, ace jack with spades, all of our jack jack combos. But I would expect him to barrel off here with anything with the jack, and then obviously his straights. Does go for the pot size jam as expected. Set that up on the turn. Diamonds River not going to discourage him, and Phil, without the snap call, was not laying the trap. Yeah, Kakazi, both straights are going to go for max value here for sure. Phil in the tank might have something like 2 pair with the jack. Um, Certainly a jack blocker is going to weight him towards calling with all of his medium hands. A 8 is going to be a lot more dicey. A king is going to be a lot more dicey. At the same time, jacks are going to be very, very well represented and really always represented in a GTO bluffing range. So there's some counter lines of thinking that unblocking jacks will give more bluffs to Chance, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. Still in the tank. See if he makes some sort of hero call here. Does call off. Chance with the king blockers. Phil with just the queen 10. And I believe, did he have the 8? Queen 10, and he did have an 8 blocker. Good enough for him to make the call. Chance with just the kings. Certainly a better player than I. I will defer to his judgment. Don't love setting up the pot size jam with this hand specifically on the turn. Interesting. Interesting line. I would, we'll have to run this. This is a pretty curious one. Not a line I'm taking with his combo. Sorry, guys, I can actually flash that up if anybody's curious. I've now altered the hand enough, but we're on a break anyways. So here's what we're looking at for the turn sim. We're looking at about 70%, 67% check back here, and only small bets with this specific hand class. This is just very hard to balance and mix based on your backdoor flushes on the flop, which did not have the ace high backdoor flush on the flop. So this hand specifically is likely to be pure checking. Um, mix in some very, very infrequent low bets, but without the ace high backdoor flush from the flop, solver has chosen to almost exclusively check this down. Our hand class right here. Uh, nope. Here. Interesting to note. Bill really on a nice little run here over the last hour, hour and a half. Bill going with the check raise on the flop, Chance style. We've seen Chance be the far more frequent flop aggressor with check raises. This is one of the few times we've actually seen Phil go for it, and he gets snap 3-bet on the flop. Obviously, a very wet texture. We could see get it in here. We could also see a call with a somewhat reasonable 1 SPR on the turn, although that puts us in a very awkward spot if we're on a combo draw and we miss the turn. I would expect most continues to jam here. However, yeah, and we do get it. And Phil with top set and a flush draw just makes quads, not a big deal. We see Chance with the gutter ball and nut flush draw in rough shape. Phil now up 2 buy-ins after that holds. If you're Chance, you absolutely hate to see your opponent with a 6 and 2 diamonds. Really not what you're looking for. Obviously, the 6 is a little bit redundant there, being the 6 of diamonds. However, um, that is 2 of your expected clean outs off the table. Chance with no board pair interaction here uh, ends up being a much bigger dog than he would like against this exact combo when they get it in. Very nice hand from Mr. Galfond. A little bit of a cooler, although Chance doesn't have to play this specific hand quite so aggressively. He's not scared of that many turns. And in fact, can turn some showdown value on kings or aces. We may run this just to see how aggressively Solver plays this. This hand does play as a pure call, somewhat as expected. Yeah, this does not have to be played so aggressively. Our hand is just slightly too good here. Um, Now, this actually has the extra gut shot. So without the gut shot, they don't have exactly the 8-4 deuce. We do only have the 8-4-3, which gives our specific hand an extra gutter ball here. This slightly, but no, we are still seeing pure call here. So Chance getting a little bit spicy, putting the money in on a hand that may do better calling in position. Table 1, we have an all in. This is 4 bets on the river. Excuse me, on the turn. Chance clearly with the nuts here. Bill trying to decide if he has enough equity to put it in. He does, misses. Chance's nuts hold up. Chance recoups a buy-in. Pretty nice spot for Chance. Has the Jack of Hearts blocker, has the straight redraw. Bill drawing to a chop or the heart flush with 1 card to go, way behind. As it says on stream, King Matthews, Phil is up approximately 50,000 today. I could be off by as much as 70,000. So, wouldn't shock me if Chance was up 20. Actually, no, that would shock me. I don't think there's any way Chance is up. Not a lot of check raises on this board. We out of position, we certainly get more raises on this texture than we would in position. Chance has shown aggression on some of these lockdown boards, but this is a very polarizing check raise. It's going to be hard for us to ever get too value by worse, and puts us in a very uncomfortable position on the river if we don't have it. We're going to run out of natural bluffs here. Your turn check raise bluffs consisting of your Jack X missed combos that can now continue to fire, represent the full house as a bluff. The reason you want to use those on the turn, of course, is because they do have a chance at filling up. Henry, if you're in the States, you got to get over here, man. We do see Chance continue as expected. Be very unusual to check raise that turn and give up here. Phil needing to decide how frequently he has to defend this, how often Chance is taking a jack and turning it into a bluff rather than just check calling and trying to realize his value on the river, seeing if he can fill up. Not a line that everybody will take. It is hard to find bluffs here. They do mostly just consist of the Jack X that I mentioned, which a lot of players will put into their check call range. Would love to see Phil snap this off with a flush. Very hard to do. Flush with no board pairs is in an absolute nightmare spot here. Phil makes the call. Wow, and we see the top pair blocker and the flush from Chance going very thin. That will give you some very good insight into the dynamic between these two players. That is very interesting to see. Phil, not happy about it. Firing shots. Both of them know this was an unusually played hand, to say the least. Chance going for what has to be considered pretty thin value, even heads up. Yes, the queen is an absolute key blocker, knowing that he can get value potentially from a jack. 10 of hearts specifically, great blocker to have. However, you're not going to find a lot of players putting this in their arsenal. That is very interesting. See Chance really giving it to him in the chat post flop. Chance going thin value all day, fish. Phil going, what the fuck? How do you bet the river there? We're not sure either. Free bet pot. Phil correctly identifying that he gets very few bets on this flop, under 20%. However, this is a very good hand for it. Then might have gotten a little bit greedy, laying the trap at a range disadvantage on the turn. Chance never bites. Phil looks a little bit silly, ending up with the nuts and a nut redraw, rivering even bigger nuts, getting no value. Chance playing it perfectly, not falling for the trap. Out of position does get about 45% bets after the flop goes check, check. 679 only gets to check about 12% of the time, which could be simplified to 0 with that action. All of its checks are complete mixes. It is mixing a little bit in with some small bet sizings when it has some flush blockers. If we look at this hand over here real quickly, I know we're going to block some action real quick, but we do see the 679 almost being a mandatory bet on this turn by the out of position 3-better. This could be classified as just a mistake on Phil's end. It will happen. These are tricky spots to play. I wouldn't be aware at the frequency at which this needs to be bet. So not all that surprising, but we do see this combo specifically after the flop checks through really should be bet. Got to start getting value. You're just resetting. Oh boy, now we have the inverse table seating. Oh no. Phil on top on table 2, on the bottom on table 1. You hate to see it. We made it through the majority of the session without this happening, but I am going to be officially on tilt. In the tank here, facing the bet on table 1. Gets raised. We've seen this tank raise happen a couple times. Last time, he had the goods on this tank raise. We have seen him have a propensity to slow play, so having a boat here is not unrealistic. Certainly could have 9-5, certainly could have 8-5. This has been a relatively frequent occurrence. Bill cannot be happy facing a raise over his pot size bet with almost any of his holdings here. A straight is really in jail. Any five, you'd hate to see it since fives are going to be a large portion of opponents' bluffs, although more frequently hands like 9-8, 8-2, etc. Phil does let it go, gives Chance credit for another trap. We once again see a raise over the continuation bet from the three better. These guys have been extremely aggressive doing this all day long. Um, this is a pretty balanced board. We're going to see about 60%, a little bit over 60% of C bets from the three better on this texture. We're not going to see many raises as we've run into quite a bit. Chance raising at a much higher frequency. It would appear, anyways, that he's raising at a much higher frequency on flops than Solver does, especially in position, but also frequently check raising. Now, part of this could be a factor of Phil using third pot continuation betting in a spot where solvers often are using half pot or even 2/3 to 3/4, which would mean you do need to attack it more aggressively. So this simply could be a strong adjustment by Chance. We're early on in the challenge, very hard to tell. Have to keep an eye on these spots. Now, after it goes check, check on the turn, the flopped flush draw comes in after the turn completes many of the straight draws and all of the wraps. Phil potting the river, representing the flush or potentially top straight. Although, when we do have a raise on the flop, flush draws are very prominent here. We have seen some thinner, large sizings for value on the river in the past. I would be very scared to do this without 10-8 and a good flush blocker and Chance piles. This is the danger of doing this without a flush. Flushes are very prominent. Given the way this hand played out, it was a 3-bet pot. The flop was raised. We have a abundance of suited cards in both players' ranges, and Phil has to lay it down. Not sure what he had there. Might have been going for thin value and got punished. Might have had a bluff. We don't really know. Chance winning a nice pot and bringing this match pretty close to even, I would say. Chance going with third pot in position. Small little value bet here, trying to make Phil defend at a very high frequency. Goes with the check raise once again on the flop on table one. Phil probably trying to decide whether or not he should attack this small bet. Deep into the tank for a $400 wager. And just folds. Calls the check raise on the flop. Wow. Chance, despite the range disadvantage here, certainly has more nutted combos, has more 3-4, has far fewer ace jack plus, does have a deuce and 5-5 sets, but shouldn't play too big of a factor here. Goes for full pot on the turn after check raising flop. Now, this is going to be a tough sell. Chance should have almost no king 10 by the time we get to the river here. Would have to be king 10 with clubs. Does exist. Low frequency. Set up the SPR of 1. Goes for half pot. So he really is pitching the 3-4 straight here. This is certainly could have a couple other combos, but is basically saying I have 3-4 and trying to force Phil into a marginal defend. Phil's call here will probably be heavily factored in whether he has clubs. Obviously, you do not want clubs in your hand when making a light call in this spot. If he has straight blockers, something like, wow, very, 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 very interesting hand here. We might have dropped a couple frames. We should be back now. Chat, are we back? I think we're back. Let me know when we are back in chat, and I'll replay this hand real quick. We saw a very, very interesting hand being played here. It's all right, boys. We got a replay. Relax. Professional streamer on it. We're going to bring this hand back. We saw a very interesting hand with Phil having a hugely underrepresented nut portion of his range here. Does not have many 3/4s. Had it in this spot. Decided to slow play it. Then debating on the river whether to raise or just call. Goes with the raise. Had the nuts the whole way until the river. Induced on the 4 blocker by Chance. We've seen Chance go for these pretty thin bluffs with the gutter balls. Yeah, roll exactly. He has gone for a lot of flop check raises with gutters. Seems to be his thing. Not sure how I feel about it with not having a single club in your hand. It is pretty important to have just a club when you go for a check raise on this flop because you do want to block as many continues as possible when your check raise hand is this weak. It's not necessarily about having 2 clubs to have the flush draw value yourself. It's more about blocking your opponent's continues, and you're going to get looked up by a lot of ace X with diamonds here, or excuse me, with clubs here. So having the club blocker is important. This is a pretty thin bluff. I will up running this because I am curious. It was a single raised pot. Make sure you guys can see the other hands going while I do this. I would guess this is simply not a raise. We've seen before, but anything is possible. I do like the 3 diamonds. That's huge. Um, that blocks a lot of the calling range with backdoor diamonds. So that is very, very nice. That might make up for not having the single club, and you could eke some of this into a mixed raising range. Um, but I personally would prefer to have a club here. I think you're blocking more continues. Big pot over here on table 2. Still going to run this. I haven't followed the action on table 2, so I can't comment on it well enough. We do see that Chance's hand is a fold on the flop from the previous hand. I'll pull that up for you guys. After this hand on table 2 completes. And in fact, the hands that call do want to flush draw. The hands that raise, additionally, we do see backdoor cards simply folding here. Phil getting paid off. Jack, it looks like. Its value on the turn and the river with ace jack, excellent sizing on the river there. Incorporated a great hand into protecting his small bet sizing on the river. Went 1/3 pot, got paid off. Here we see the previous hand where we don't have the exact same board, but we do have the exact same hand class with the jack 10 and the gutter ball for the nuts. We do see this hand is pure folding without flush draw interaction. This hand simply just doesn't make a good enough bluff. We don't maintain enough equity, and we aren't blocking enough continues against what is a fairly strong range on the ace high board for the in position pre-flop raiser. That does seem to be a little bit over aggressive from Chance. Chance once again getting aggressive on the flop, going with the check raise. We have seen this at an absurdly high frequency. I have personally never played anyone heads up who check raises at this frequency on flops. I would be very frustrated, extremely difficult to play against. You end up in a lot of guessing spots like this. What do you do with your overpairs? I don't know. I only play PLO for a living. I have no idea. Curious how many check raises out of position really gets on this 7-7-2. The answer is not many. We have solver check raising at 5% here on the 7-7-2 board. So this is almost can be simplified to a pure check call, check fold scenario with where we see Chance once again raising. So again, extremely hard to play against. Not sure how versed Phil is in this. This might be the case of Chance going with a strategy that he knows Phil hasn't studied to exploit Phil's exact game, which Chance has studied so far, has worked pretty well. Chance follows up the flop check raise with a turn bet and now a large river bet, going with what has become his go-to 3/4 pot river bet on a paired board. We've seen Phil attack this sizing once and go with the raise. Here he chooses to call. A little conservative. Not sure I like this call. Does have it. Feels like it's going to be hard to get value from worse. Feels the chance is very. Oh, fuck. Of course, we get the snap fold in the very next hand, so we don't get to see the replay. Phil with the 7-6 for the nuts. Chance had 8-8 as his bluff hand there. Yeah, I think Phil's call is okay. It is going to be very hard to get called by worse by the time we get to that river with that line. It looks a little bit conservative considering that he filled up on the river, basically second nuts, technically third nuts, but for the hands that are actually in play there, basically second nuts. Seems fine. Played the hand great, had the 7, laid the trap. Chance fell right into it, got over aggressive, and was punished. Yep, Moonline Master is correct. We saw more frequent all-ins early in the day, has really slowed down later. Was a tale of Chance getting off to a very early rush, spiking up 50,000. Phil coming back to take about a $50,000 to $70,000 lead of his own, about the midway point, then has given half or a little bit more than half of that back, and we've held about steady. I played a little bit before. Uh-oh. Shots being fired at table 1. Chance sitting out, firing off the "you got lucky today" fish. Phil responding back with the "LOL, yeah, right." They may be done for the day. Parting shots by Chance, setting the stage for another heated battle tomorrow. I believe we are looking at the last hand of the day. Interesting, interesting. They're continuing on one table. Chance sits out silently. Nope, he doesn't. Wants to get one last jab in. Wow. Needles him, snap sits out before the reply. Says, "See you tomorrow, my favorite ATM." Filthy, absolutely filthy. We're in for more of this heated rivalry tomorrow. Good game to both these players. Thank you, everybody who stuck around or even just swung by today. Really appreciate it. It looks like I will be back at it again tomorrow. Spread the word. GG's, guys. See y'all later.